Carol,
What?
James, here's a lot of noise from the kitchen.
Oh.
Welcome and thank you for being part of our virtual design and remodeling seminar. I'm Morris Carey, and my brother James and I are here to try to help you and your family with this new normal, when we're hoping that we'll soon return to a more familiar way of life. But boy, virtual presentations are sure working out good for us, and we hope they are for you too.
Well,
If you are familiar with our work in the media, you know that for the better part of, I guess, going on about 34 years, we have used radio, television, print, online, and now the virtual seminar as a means of sharing with you our passion for what we do. And as a matter of fact, our media careers grew out of this seminar that we first presented in 1986 to a standing room only crowd. Boy, have things changed. So the idea here is not to sell you anything. We have folks who are in California, and we have folks in other parts of the country who are attending today. So we'll do our best to paint a broad picture and hope that the information that you walk away with today will help you in making good, prudent, buyer beware, informed decisions about any home improvement that you may be considering.
As James just said, our goal is to share information and ideas about the steps involved in hiring a contractor, and we hope will help you become a more informed consumer and prevent the potential pitfalls associated with the home remodeling process, and there are many.
Oh boy. So what are we going to do today? Well, in the short time we have together, the goal will be to help you successfully plan your project. Make good choices, get the best bang for your remodeling buck, prevent the dreaded job delays, keep you in budget, and how to manage the old, hey, while you're at it, changes.
Your contractor and his crew will literally become household guests for the duration of your project. You need to feel comfortable with your contractor and be convinced that he can deliver the quality you expect on time and in budget. Contractor shopping is one of the most daunting tasks in the remodeling process, and we hope that we can make this a little bit easier for you.
You know, people like to say, when can you start? When can you start? You know, and the contractor will say, well, look, we'll get to the details after. Let's get by. You know what? It's going to rain pretty soon. If you really want this project to be completed in time for the holidays, we got to get into the ground right away. We can talk about finishes and some of the finite details after we get started. Wrong. Plan, plan, plan. Enough can't be said for good planning.
You know, you can also be your own contractor, and there are tremendous advantages to being your own contractor because you really aren't required to hire a contractor to make improvements to your own property. The law allows you to do it yourself. Generally speaking, you don't have to be a licensed contractor to do your own room addition or remodel, or any home improvement for that matter. There are some restrictions in some counties, but usually they're very minor. Each community has its own set of rules regarding owner builders. We know of one community that doesn't allow owner builders to do their own electrical work. In this community, a licensed electrical contractor must do the work. As an owner builder, you may not need to have a contractor's license, but you are expected to get a building permit where required and to comply with all applicable building codes and ordinances. And please note, a project can be dismantled later if it is found that a permit was not issued for the work. And we know of several projects that this has happened to. The discovery of this condition often occurs when a pre-sale home inspection is performed and it comes back on you.
So, being your own remodeling contractor regardless of how big or small the project is. Uh, maybe it's a bathroom, uh, it could be a kitchen, or you might take on a whole full blown addition. It can be exciting, it can be satisfying, but keep in mind that as an owner builder, you're guaranteed complete control over every aspect of your project and exactly how it will be built, right down to the very last detail. So, as the contractor, you decide on materials, how things will be assembled, hiring and firing, the project schedule, managing the budget, construction means and methods, payroll, and boy, is that complex, pickups and deliveries, safety meetings, and maybe you'll need a porta potty or rental equipment. That all is something that goes part and parcel with being your own contractor.
There is some risk, and we've already discussed the return, but there is some risk. Possible final financial rewards coupled with the pleasure of personal involvement are achievements that should not cloud an owner builder's normally good judgment. You must consider some factors before calculating how much money you'll actually save by doing it yourself. Remember, time off work means lost wages. Experts say that an owner builder can expect to save about 10% on the construction cost, sometimes even more. This considers the cost to repair mistakes that are normally made and your lost wages, figured at about $20 an hour. And if you make more money than that, then the cost for you to do it becomes a little greater. As an owner builder, you become an employer. As such, you expose yourself to risks associated with worker injuries and damage to your home by people you've hired. So before taking on the task of owner builder, have a meeting with your insurance agent. Find out who pays if an individual in your employ burns down part of your home. Find out what kind of insurance binder you need from each subcontractor that you hire. You'll need to have insurance from everyone.
But I thought the contractor had insurance. Why do I need insurance? Well, we'll get into that a little bit. And a reminder that we will be delighted to answer your questions. We'll put up Q&A and we'll make time at the end of the program to answer questions. So if there's something you see that you'd like to discuss, make a note of it and we will deal with that. Also, a full recording of this presentation will be available for you to go through after.
Oh, hiring a contractor. You're not going to do it yourself. Occasionally, even if an avid do-it-yourselfer has to hire a contractor, whoa, granted, hiring a specialty contractor to install a roof or redo a countertop is not so complicated as enlisting the services of a general contractor to do, a whole house remodel or an addition. But fortunately, the task of hiring a contractor on any level can be simplified by following a few basic rules, and we've got some good ones.
Okay, let's talk about some of the advantages of using a professional contractor. And I don't, again, want you to feel like we're discouraging your involvement. Many of our clients are involved, and we're delighted to have them involved to the extent that they don't derail the job or put themselves and their family in harm's way.
More about that in a minute.
Buying power. A contractor's volume buying earns deeper discounts. So I told the story recently of three of us who were licensed general contractors living in a row on our street. It was time to replace the wood fencing. So the three of us got together and said, look, we'll each go out and take the material list that we agreed on for all the fencing, concrete, posts, boards, everything, bid it out to our three favorite lumber suppliers, and then we would each bid the project to three fence contractors, fence builders. As it turned out, all three fencing contractors, their pricing, labor and material installed, finished, was less expensive than what either of us could purchase just the lumber for. And that's because the fencing contractor buys material by the truck and trailer. I use that example, but contractors have that buying power with windows, doors, flooring, painting, all sorts. Familiarity, regularly using the same vendors, that could be subcontractors or material suppliers, gives the contractor insight into a firm's quality, dependability, and customer service. And finally, leverage. If something goes wrong, and it often does, the contractor who has a long-established relationship with the vendor can expect full cooperation and professional service because that vendor has a vested interest in that relationship with that contractor and is looking forward to more work from that contractor down the road.
As an owner builder, you have one shot with each contractor.
That's right.
And you don't have that vested interest, and it could take months to get service done, if service gets done at all. So there are, with regard to leverage, that's a very, very important issue. The art of hiring a contractor is frequently confused with the act of getting bids. All too often, the contractor who produces the lowest bid is the one who gets the job, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could be more dangerous to an unwary consumer. The processes are closely related, but hiring a contractor and bidding are two completely separate issues. Hiring a contractor involves investigating that person's character, dependability, business stability, and reputation. Bidding simply has to do with pricing the project. They're two different stories.
By the way, Morris, you photographed really nicely in that picture.
Thank you very much, James. I appreciate it.
All right, what to do first? Where do I begin first? This can be a really tough process. It's kind of been refined as the digital technology has evolved. But first, reach out to as many contractors as you have time to contact. Typically, you'll have to contact at least 10. Maybe you'll get 4 responses, and out of the 4 responses, maybe 2 bids. That's pretty average, some more, some less. What resources are available to you? We like to suggest personal references that you can get from family, friends, and neighbors. Who did you use to do your kitchen, Helen? George? Who added on to your house? Keep in mind, though, keep in mind that your definition of quality may be drastically different. So if Helen is really happy with her bathroom, you need to take a look at Helen's bathroom to make sure that you're on board with the quality. Online resources have sprouted up over the last several years. They include Home Advisor, Angie's List, Yelp, Houzz, the web, and still more. But remember that many of these resources involve contractor payment to be included. So many of these contractors may not be as qualified as one might expect. So don't consider that the vetting process is over just because you've selected a contractor from one of these resources. Finally, there are public and private agencies from which you may draw upon, such as the Better Business Bureau, the National Association of the Remodeling Industry, the National Association of Home Builders Remodelers, the National Kitchen and Bath Association, and of course, for folks in California, we have the Contractor State License Board. In other areas, in other states, there are licensing boards, the Department of Industrial Relations, and other agencies.
Here are a few facts that you really need to study. And I love this one. We've been getting fan mail for over 3 decades. And over the past, these letters that we have received complaining about contractors all begin exactly the same way. You know, at first he seemed like such a really nice guy. You know, to some individuals, hiring someone still means a phone call and a handshake. Not so smart. Practically every professional you talk with will be friendly, courteous, and helpful. But you know, business is business. And although friendship is key to a successful business relationship, it's important to know who you are doing business with from a business standpoint as well. And here's a hard, cold fact that you may not realize. According to the California Contractor State License Board, who manages over 300,000 licensed contractors in California, they tell us that 80% of the contractors who fail do so not because of their inability to perform their trade, but because they have poor business skills, poor bidding skills, improper money management, and a lack of understanding of your rights, which are just a few of the reasons for their failure. The best bid has nothing to do with a contractor's credibility. The amount of the bid does not indicate how or when the contractor will finish the job or if it will ever be finished.
Give us that line one more time.
The best bid has absolutely nothing to do with the contractor's credibility. The amount of the bid does not indicate how or when the contractor will finish the job or if it will ever be finished.
Oof. All right. You take your dogs to the vet, but you vet contractors, and there is a process. By the way, I feel very proud to be a 3rd generation contractor. There are 4th generation contractors in our family. And I feel that it's a very wonderful, in my career working with my brother for 40 years now, working together, I don't know that there's anything that I could have done or in any way I could have spent my life than what we're doing. It is so satisfying to transform someone's home in some way, shape, or form. It really, really is wonderful. And I don't think we want to imply in any way, shape, or form that the majority of people that do what we do are dunderheads. They're not. They're good people. They're honest people. They work hard. They're very talented. However, you know that a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch. So we just want to prevent you from getting one of those bad apples. And in so doing, we've created something that we call a contractor information form. We'll share that with you in a moment, but essentially, we think that you should ask each contractor that comes to your home to complete the disclosure form. Without this information, we don't think that you will possibly know who you'll be doing business with and what effect it could potentially have on your project. Think about it. You go to the store these days and you spend $1,000, $2,000 on a home entertainment system. And what you get is 4 pages of loan documents to be completed by the retailer so that you can get it on credit. Yet, when it comes to hiring a contractor to improve your home, say $15,000 or more, because the majority of the people that we're speaking with are in the Bay Area, and it's normally about $115,000. The work is done on a handshake or the contractor's one-page contract, which simply is not acceptable.
We made up this special form in a book that we once wrote called Home Remodeling for Dummies, and we've recommended this form for decades. And if you look closely, you'll see that we ask for your name, address, project, and budget to be filled out at the top. Then you use that form that you filled out at the top so that the contractor can enter his owner or officer's names with contact information and license number. And you want the license number so that you can check out the contractor with the CSLB or the Department of Industrial Relations in your state. Business address, no PO box. You want an address that you can go to serve papers if it becomes necessary. And maybe it's only 1 out of 100 projects where this happens, or 1,000 projects. Be prepared. You also want that contractor's banking information. If you need to file a small claims judgment, a small claims action, and you want to get and you have a judgment, you're not going to be able to collect from the contractor without his banking information, including the bank, the branch, the account names, and numbers. So get that up front. On insurance, you want to know the contractor's workers' compensation and general liability carriers and policy numbers. And by the way, we'll tell you that a little later on that you don't want the contractor to provide you with these documents. They should come directly from the insurance company to you. Vendor reference information. Find out from vendors what the quality of the vendor's work is and the payment history with the vendor. And previous client references. Don't rely on a phone call. Visit the job. You may be calling the contractor's cousin for all you know. So you'll want to visit the contractor's jobs. You'll want to check out how the contractor pays his vendors. You want copies of the insurances from the insurance company, not the contractor. And once you have all this information, get the contractor to sign it so that you can thoroughly investigate it and be an informed consumer about who you're doing business with.
Now, I'd like to say one thing about this. One of the things we do is we have this lot of potential contractors that we're vetting. And you look for red flags. And if a red flag comes up with one particular individual, maybe you just don't hit it off, you have different ideas, you can tell there's an issue with regard to communication or what have you, and you scratch that contractor off the list. I'm going to tell you that the contractor information form is a huge piece of the vetting process, because what you'll find is that some will simply refuse to complete it. And if they refuse to complete the form, you can thank them because they have just eliminated themselves from the those who are being seriously considered. So the form itself, even if it has no information completed, can be a useful device in the vetting process.
An old timer once wrote to us to tell us about his father who'd built a family home from the ground up. This is really true. And the father had built the home with his own two hands. The fellow went on to report that it had been done without a licensed contractor, without permits, and without any government involvement at all. He said the house was over a half-century old and that it was in great condition. Now, the truth is, we wish that every home could be built that way, but it just ain't so. Hiring a licensed contractor, like getting a permit, is simply taking the additional step to add another layer of protection to your formula for success.
Now, we don't want to imply that we or that anyone that does what we do should rely upon the local building department and building inspections as project managers and supervisors. That's not the idea. However, it's nice to know that everything that's done is in keeping with local building code. And I do say local because building codes will vary from community to community. And so having that extra level of protection is important. We received a question from Calvin, who writes, do I need a permit for bathroom remodels? Well, you're going to find now a permit is required for most remodeling projects, Calvin. And when in doubt, all you need to do is dial up your local building department. These people are not the enemy. These people are your allies, and they're good people. And they're not going to go through your home and inspect every square foot of your home. They're going to come in the front door. They're going to go to that bathroom that needs to be remodeled. They're not going to look left. They're not going to look right. They're going to look at the work that's being performed. They're going to sign your inspection card and be on their way. So the permit provides an added level of protection to ensure that your project meets minimum code and health, safety, and sanitation standards. A contractor can't obtain a permit without proof of workers' compensation insurance, unless that contractor is a one-person operation. But if that contractor has employees, workers' compensation is required, and the carrier and policy must be reported to the building department. By the way, be wary of a contractor who suggests that you can save money by obtaining the permit yourself. Warning, if you obtain the permit, you become responsible for the entire cost of project injuries and code violations. So the contractor will say, you know what, you don't want to pay me to go down to the building department and fill out those documents and pick up the permit, and that's going to cost you a lot of money. Well, you've got free time, why don't you go down there and do that? That's a ploy often. That's a ploy because the individual does not have workers' compensation and has employees, and otherwise would not be able to obtain the permit. And the other is to shift all of the liability from his or her shoulders onto your shoulders. Don't fall prey to that. Finally, many people believe that getting a permit is like sending an engraved invitation to the tax assessor, and that simply is not true. Updating a kitchen or bath can have little effect on tax valuation, and when thoughtfully presented, most projects will have a modest effect on property tax valuation. If you're doing a bathroom remodel, and it's a put and take, like for like, that should have little effect, but you have to be a prudent buyer, and you can't go in there and you have to really understand that the valuation has everything to do with what you're doing. And paint and flooring and counters and cabinets and a toilet and a tub should have little or no effect if they exist.
Okay, this is a good one. The interview. If the term of the job will exceed a week, then interviewing each prospective contractor becomes extremely important. And don't think the contractor isn't sizing you up too. Some things to consider include the following. Find out what time the applicants like to start work in the morning and when their day ends. Are they family types? When you have to live in close quarters with someone who will be working in your home for weeks and months on end, you should be sure that you are reasonably compatible. If you have a pet and the applicant doesn't like pets, you can be in a fix. If the applicant is a talker, you want to know if the applicant is a talker or a listener. Do you get the feeling the contractor wants to overwhelm you with claims of splendor, magnificence, and grandeur? If the contractor isn't listening now, be advised it doesn't get better. These are all things you just don't want to find out about after you've signed on the proverbial dotted line.
By the way, my brother likes to tell me that I should do more listening and less talking. So you know what? You think that you need to hire a contractor, but you'd also like to roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty, and that's okay. We have a customer participation program, but it's designed to involve the client, because some clients really want to be involved and have a stake in their project. It's not just all about money. But for many, however, it is about economizing. So if you've decided to hire a contractor and you want to participate in some of the work yourself, then by all means, go for it. Some contractors do offer customer participation programs where you can get involved in some of the work, but you should be aware that the contractor is exposed to greater risk when you're involved in the work. As a novice, you can innocently cause serious damage and literally double a contractor's management expense. Those mistakes can also delay production. That can make you unhappy and can be expensive. A contractor's overhead can be significantly increased because of delays and thereby reduce his profit. So don't be surprised if your contractor wants to limit your involvement to unskilled tasks such as demolition, maybe digging for the foundation, cleanup, trash off-haul, trips to the dump, and maybe final janitorial, polishing and dusting and all that. On the other hand, foundation, framing, plumbing, heating, and electrical systems, to name a few, are usually handled exclusively by the contractor. If you want to participate in the construction of your project, you need to be sure to discuss your desire to do this with the contractor before your contract is signed. The picture of the happy couple was taken before they really got involved. Okay.
Oh, if it's too good to be true, Years ago, a dear friend asked our advice about a remodel. She told us that her contractor quoted her $5,000 to do a bathroom bedroom addition in her garage. She asked us if we thought the price was fair. We responded by telling her that the price was much, much too low and that it probably wouldn't even cover the cost of materials. She was infuriated by our response. It was obvious that she had already made up her mind. We felt that she was convinced that she had made a super deal. Sadly, in the end, she found out the hard way. Our advice to you: if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. A low price does not a contractor make, and a wise consumer does not the bait take.
By the way, that was one of our grandmother's favorite sayings. If it's too good to be true, chances are it is. Take a moment. Lisa, who is part of our group, asks the following question. Does the contractor who is a one-person operation and hires all subs to have workers' comp insurance? If not, who is responsible for injury to sub and damage caused by a sub? That's a marvelous question, Lisa, and we will tell you that if the individual is a one-person operation and workers' compensation is not required, it is incumbent upon that contractor to engage subcontractors on the project who have, of course, the required license for their specialty, who have general liability insurance and their own workers' compensation policy that covers their company and their employees.
And their binders would be sent directly from their insurance carriers directly to you.
That's a marvelous question. That is a great, great question, and thank you. And you may ask questions along the way like Lisa if you'd like. We will, however, make time at the end of the presentation to answer questions.
This is a great one. We're going to start talking now about getting and comparing bids. Remember, we've discussed the contractor's integrity, dependability, reliability, honesty, and ability to do good work. Now we go to the next step of hiring a contractor, which is getting and comparing bids, apples for apples. Boy, this is a confusing one.
All right, here's an example for you that most people can relate to, because not everybody may be in the market for a bath remodel, room addition, a kitchen remodel, but most people sometime will have to deal with roof replacement. So let's assume for a moment that you want a new roof. So you call 10 roofing contractors, 4 show up to survey your roof, and you finally end up getting 3 bids. The bids are $8,000, $16,000, and $23,000, all for the same house. And you're scratching your head because you can't figure out why the bids are so totally different. Well, in a nutshell, here's what went wrong. In our example, only one value is known to all bidders, and that simply is the size of the roof. And often they won't even come out to the house anymore. They'll fire up Google Earth and they'll be able to zoom in on your roof. They'll snap the size. They'll do the street view and call it a day. Well, you didn't tell the roofers what type of roofing you wanted. So each roofer simply provided a bid based on his or her favorite roofing material. You have no idea how often consumers make this mistake. In the case of any project, roofing, flooring, cabinetry, and more, you must first decide on the specific material that you want by brand, model, finish, color, weight, and more.
Here's an example of some things to consider for this roof we're talking about. Because and you know, with each category of work that you want to have performed, there is a similar list of details that you'll need to learn about. Some things to consider when roof shopping, for example, is the roofing material. Is it going to be slate? Is it going to be stone? Is it going to be wood? Is it going to be metal? Is it going to be fiberglass? What is it going to be? Rubber? Is it going to be plastic? What brand? What model? What style? What color? And what about the warranty? So you're going to have to do a little investigating. And if you have a roof material supplier in your area, and not everyone does, go down there, put your hands on the various materials and talk to the people who sell the material to the roofers and find out a little bit on your own. Underlayment type. Underlayment used to be black felt paper under composition shingles and wood shingles. That's changing so drastically now. They're making such good underlayments, they're better than the roof covering. You'll want to select an underlayment type by brand, model, weight, and warranty. Removal of the existing roofing. How many layers are to be removed and off-haul? Some contractors say, you only have 2 layers of roof on there. We can add a 3rd under the code with no problem. Listen, you only get to see the framing on your roof once each time you replace a roof. If 2 layers exist, that means that no one has looked at the wood framing under your roofing for 25 or 30 years. So when you do a roofing job, you want to remove everything down to the wood. You want to repair the roof sheathing, and you want an hourly rate plus materials in writing from the contractor who will do the time and materials repair, and you'll want to know about that before you let him proceed. Metal flashing replacement. The roofing contractor does plumbing vents, exhaust vents, chimney flashing, skylight flashing, valley flashing, and he is supposed to paint the flashings to match the roof. If you have a blue roof and he paints the flashings red, he goofed. You making sure that he paints them to match your roof covering. Gutters and downspouts are normally done by the roofing contractor as well. And they need to know the location of the material, the location where the gutters go, where the downspouts go, the material to be used. Is it aluminum or galvanized sheet metal? What's the weight of the metal, the profile, size? You want to know the shape of the gutter. There's all kinds of choices. You might want to change to a shape you like better. All gutters and all profiles have various sizes. And the finish, you can get a factory finish or you can have it painted on the job site. And you want to choose the color as well. In other words, be as specific as possible about what you want the contractor to bid on. Apples for apples. This goes to each contractor. What's going to be the only difference? The contractor's labor rate. So instead of 8,000 and 13,000 and 25,000, you'll have 7,000, 8,000, and 9,000. And you can start investigating from there.
Or 21, 22, or 21, 22, and 23, depending upon the size.
Okay, yeah.
And the material. And by the way, this is, as the title states, an example. We could use this example on cabinets, on countertops, on plumbing fixtures, on flooring, on drywall, on insulation, and the list goes on and on and on. So a lot of moving parts on a project. The bathroom, there are a million parts. Kitchen, as many, and an addition more. I just want to make one note here. For example, we talked about painting the vents. That, by the way, is a building code. Plumbing vents must be painted according to the building code. Four steps to getting good bids. 4 steps to getting good bids. I love this child with the magnifying glass. It really tells the story. Step 1 is narrow the playing field. Find reputable contractors by using the information that we're sharing with you throughout this presentation. You need to qualify each applicant by keeping in mind that a contractor's integrity, I mean, it really boils down to all of this. We're going to talk about contracts, and we're going to talk about mechanics liens, and we're going to talk about risk and insurance. But I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, setting everything aside, it all boils down to that individual's integrity, honesty, and experience. That will drive every detail contained in this presentation. Lots and lots and lots and lots of terrific craftspeople out there. A whole heck of a lot better than me, because I don't make my living using my tools anymore. I sit behind a computer most of the day. They do a whole heck of a lot better job than I would do if our positions were reversed. Conversely, I know that my talent as a contractor exceeds theirs. So a good craftsperson does not a contractor make.
Step 2, make sure that everyone knows exactly what you want. We talked about detailing the roof, whether the project is large or small. Hire an architect or a designer to prepare a professional set of plans accompanied by a thorough set of specifications. You don't have to do it yourself. There are dozens and dozens of people out there who can help you with it. You got to let the purse strings go a little bit. It's either pay now or pay later. You save nothing by taking shortcuts here. Specifications are an extremely important part of the planning and bidding process. They elaborate on items in the plans. For example, the plans may indicate that the bedroom has 2 sinks. The specifications indicate the brand, model, and color of the sinks, what they're made of, and any special installation instructions, below the tile, above the tile, and so on. A proper bid simply cannot be made by the best contractors when specifications are incomplete. Specifications that are thorough reduce the chance that bidders will make assumptions. You know what that means. And you know what happens when you assume something. By the way, for small projects where plans aren't needed, you're still better off to prepare a thorough set of specifications. Get professional help here as well.
Well, I don't need plans to paint the interior of my home. Okay, I'll agree with that. But what you do need is a very well-detailed paint schedule, especially if you're using multiple colors and sheens. As an example, entry door, punch color. It's Paradise Red, the brand, Sherwin-Williams. The style of paint is their Ecstasy. What is the sheen? It's semi-gloss. Ceiling in the bedroom is Swiss coffee. What is the sheen? It's flat. What are the walls? And sometimes we look at north, south, east, and west and call those out. This way we all agree what work is being done. And there's, well, you didn't tell me that you wanted a special color on the north wall where you're going to put the headboard. So, okay, maybe you don't need a plan, but you do need a well-detailed set of specifications.
There you go.
Step 3 is making sense out of the prices. This can be really a tough undertaking, kind of digesting all the numbers. And by the way, I'll back up for a moment and say, you know, for those who are joining us today who are in the San Francisco Bay Area, we are now in what is regarded as the most expensive location in the country, overtaking Manhattan recently for the cost of construction and home improvement. That's the bad news. The good news is that the return on your investment and real estate values are among the highest in the country. So it may be tough to swallow when you look at the cost, but you'll laugh all the way to the bank when it comes to recouping value.
That bathroom cost 3 times as much as I paid for my house.
Oh, yeah.
Are you crazy?
Yeah, and all we do, as an example, is we are the purveyors of labor and material, and we pull labor and material together and come up with the price. And it's quite expensive. Sometimes I have to look twice at the numbers, put my glasses on, clean my glasses, but it is the way it is. So to make sense out of various bids, you want to insist that your contractors provide a price breakdown, such as the example on screen. Obtaining that breakdown from each contractor will allow you more accurately to compare your bids. I don't think that you just want to look at the bottom line. What you want to do is, to be fair, to be a good buyer and to be fair to each of the contractors, I think you really want to decipher dig deep. The cost breakdown also will allow you to determine that at least some value is included in the bid for every category of work on the project. As an example, if you see 0 for light fixtures, you might say, I have 6 light fixtures that are going into the project. Why is it 0? Well, I don't put an allowance in there because everybody's tastes are different, and we'll extend our buying power to you through our lighting showroom. Or you might say, okay, but I want a budget of $750 for light fixtures in there, so that I have a realistic cost. And you tell every contractor, give me an allowance of $750. Additionally, the pricing divisions of labor, material, and fixtures provide yet another level of detail and clarity. Don't forget to stipulate allowance values for those items of work that are not yet completely detailed in the plans, whatever they may be.
Okay, step 4, compare and select the winning bid. Boy, first I'll give you this text and then I'll tell you a story. By comparing one price to 2 or 3 others, you'll eventually be able to determine what is a fair and reasonable price. Contractors who've been around for a while know who the good bidders are by years of trial and error. You don't. You just don't have that same luxury. That's why you must be so careful about who you select to do the bidding and the form in which the bid is returned. Even then, understanding the bid requires lots of patience and study on your part. Can you spell spreadsheet? Don't be fooled by the low bidder. A really low bidder, like a really high one, has probably made a mistake. As a general contractor, we get multiple bids for each category of work, and then we average them. This is what I wanted to share with you, which is something we do. We then use the average value of that category as a benchmark from which to compare all bids in that category. First, we take all of the bids, whatever the range is, and we get the average price. The bids in the given category that are more than 10% higher or lower than the category average are thrown out. and the most thorough of the remaining bids is selected. Using this formula sometimes leaves us with only one bid to select from. But if you get 5 bids, you average them, you throw out those that are 10% above average and 10% below average, that leaves you your smartly priced bidders. How about that?
Okay, on to the contract.
Ta-da!
One fellow that about 30 years ago, one fellow that worked for us, just the nicest guy you'd ever meet, an honest guy and a great guy, but he'd gone to salesman school, which is good. I mean, you know, not everybody is. 95% of the sales are made by 5% of the salespeople. So he said, well, I don't refer to it as a contract. We talk about the paperwork. Paperwork is paperwork is less threatening. So whether you call it a contract, paperwork, or whatever, an agreement, it is what it is, and it should be bilateral. Should not be a one-way street.
Small project or large project? A doorknob or framing a house? A small project, like replacing a doorknob, fixing a leaky faucet, shouldn't involve any more paperwork than an invoice for the repair and a check for the final payment. On the other hand, larger projects are a whole different ballgame. With big projects, a good contract is invaluable. Misunderstandings during big budget home improvements that may cost thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars can be prevented with a thorough agreement between the owner and the contractor.
All right, let's talk about some of the values associated with a contract. The basic contract agreement is a single document that ties all the other project documents together. Plans, specifications, change orders, subcontracts, the payment schedule, the production schedule, and so on. Most importantly, a good contract is, as I stated a moment ago, bilateral. It protects both parties. Unfortunately, a thorough contract tends to be awfully wordy, kind of like me. So we don't like contracts that are hard to read. We simply don't like those. The kind containing language that would confuse even a Harvard law professor. The remodeling contract basically defines the following. Who is responsible for what? When and where the work will happen, why the work is happening, and how to recover if something goes wrong.
The contract, less isn't more. The contract, less isn't more. The neat thing about a one-page contract is that it isn't very threatening. You don't have to do too much reading, and you'll find little or no confusing terms to challenge your command of the English language. Oh. On the other hand, the one-page contracts that we've found typically do not address your rights. In short, they provide protection for the contractor and almost no protection for you. Frankly, as far as we see it, a one-page contract just doesn't have enough space to protect you legally when you're agreeing to spend thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So, what are the things that a thorough contract should include? Well, it should reference the plans and the scope of work. The scope of work, of course, details what is being done. a work order, if you will, the price. And we'll talk more about this, but we recommend that you get a fixed sum contract where the price is locked in, as opposed to a time and materials contract. The contract should include a payment schedule. When are payments made? What are the benchmarks? I know that you're going to grow very fond of your contractor, but I'm certain that at some point you will be ready to have your home back, and you don't want open-ended finish date. So you want a firm start and a firm finish date. It should include both your responsibilities and what the contractor is responsible for, how changes that come up, and they do, are to be handled, how disputes are to be resolved, a penalty clause, and a notice of cancellation.
And that penalty clause is really important. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The project plans and specifications have been lightly touched on all throughout this presentation, but the contract should tie to the project plans and specifications. And in addition to a scaled floor plan, your plans should include a scope of work, which details everything to be done, right down to the door bumpers, crown molding, you name it. Elevations that enhance the plans. That's looking at wall views, the front of the kitchen cabinets or bathroom or family room, fireplace, whatever. Perspectives that make it easier to visualize your project. And of course, virtual images are now becoming something that we use in our company. A lot of companies using those so that you can spin around inside and outside your project and really get a handle on the intended look of the finished product. An electrical plan that details outlets, lighting, and appliance circuitry, plumbing fixtures and mechanical specifications and locations, cabinetry details, including style, size, and accessories, and well-detailed finish selections. Everything has a color, a texture, a size, and a shape, and everything should be given that that information should accompany every item in the project.
So, what are the choices with regard to the contract sum? The stipulated sum contract, as we stated a moment ago, is our preference. What that means is that you pay a fixed price that can only be modified by a written change order. We like the stipulated sum contract best of all. It boasts a fixed price and puts the entire responsibility of completing the work on the shoulders of the contractor. Plus, we think that establishing a price before the work begins makes a great deal of sense. Even the price of a stipulated sum contract can grow by leaps and bounds if you aren't careful. Impulse buying on your part during construction can easily double the work and the cost. Not a healthy direction if the budget is limited, so be careful for those. Hey, while you're at it, be careful not to sign a stipulated sum contract that does not include a detailed estimate like the one we discussed earlier. In a stipulated sum contract, you pay a specified amount for a task no matter how much it costs the contractor. As an example, install master bath toilet. There will be a value attached to both the toilet and the labor to install it. And the toilet should be a matter of record as part of the finish schedule and scope of work, so you know what you're getting and you know that it'll be installed. And that's how that works.
Time and materials is a little different. While time and materials contracts are great for small repair jobs, costing, several $100s, we are uncomfortable with them overall. In a time and materials contract, the contractor always makes money. The price isn't fixed and is therefore an unknown commodity to you as a consumer. You only pay for the actual time of labor and materials used at the project. With the time and materials contract, comparison shopping is difficult at best. As a consumer, would you rather sign a contract where the price stays the same no matter what it costs? Or would you rather sign a contract where every job cost, necessary or not, increases the price you pay? And let me tell you something, a good contractor can milk that time and materials till heaven freezes over. With time and materials, the contractor with the lowest labor rate or the lowest markup can ultimately end up being the most expensive choice.
One more time on that last line.
Yeah, I like that. With time and materials, the contractor with the lowest labor rate or the lowest markup can ultimately end up being the most expensive choice.
Mm-hmm.
There's no limit to the amount of time he can spend doing his work.
Now, we didn't mention it here, but I'm going to mention it. This is also an accident waiting to happen. As an example, the contractor on a time and materials contract gets paid whether the job is done properly or whether he has to fix it a second time. As an example, my son said to me, "Dad, I had a guy come out to the house and do some work, and I paid him time and materials, and I wasn't happy with it. And so he tore it out and redid it, and he charged me for tearing it out and redoing it." And I said, "Yeah, what's the matter?" And he said, "Why did I get charged for redoing it?" "Because you hired him for time and material." And that is a red flag, and it is the source of many a dispute between the homeowner and a contractor, because the homeowner expects that the job will be done right the first time, which is absolutely reasonable, and that if it needs to be redone, they should not pay for that. Well, let me introduce you to the real world of contracting. Sometimes my brother and I have to pay twice for something that isn't done properly the first time, or doesn't meet expectations, or there was a particular issue with the material. Whatever it is, the commitment is to leave the homeowner with the best quality installed product, whatever it takes. And that's on the contractor's shoulders in a stipulated sum agreement, and is not in a time and materials contract.
The payment schedule is a very specific document that tells exactly when a payment is due and for how much. With small projects, and we're going to give you a couple of examples of these. With small projects, we suggest a simple progress billing schedule where payments are made at full completion of predetermined phases of the work, such as electrical complete or rough plumbing complete or drywall hung or cabinets installed or rough inspection or whatever. For larger projects, a more sophisticated percentage of completion method is recommended. Here, each category of work is assigned a value, and you'll see what we mean when we go to the form. Thus, a percentage of work is completed in each category the dollar value is completed, the dollar value of the completed work in each category is shown. So we'll show you, I know it sounds a little confusing, but we'll show you the forms now.
So let's take a look at progress billing for smaller jobs. Stage of the project is the first column. Down payment at contract. By the way, it's a good opportunity to mention that the law in California and in many parts of the country is that a contractor may not collect more than 10% or $1,000 from the consumer, whichever is less. So if the project is $20,000, the maximum amount that can be collected at down payment is $1,000 and not $2,000. Conversely, if the project is $9,000, the maximum amount that the contractor may collect at contract signing is $900. Notice at wallboard complete, at cabinets installed, upon completion of the work, retention paid after completion of the work. That's the progress billing, and it's no coincidence that each of these is paid at a milestone where work is complete.
Never pay in advance. The percentage of completion billing shows the contractor's breakdown of prices. In the left column, there is the name of the breakdown. In the next column is the amount of each category. And then the contractor each month or each 2 months or each 2 weeks, whatever, calculates the percentage of completion for a given work. In this one, the contractor is showing that permits and fees are 100% complete, that temporary facilities, which might be the temporary toilet and temporary fencing, is at 20% complete. The budget is $450. He's billing for $90 of it. At permits and fees, the total fee is $1,200. He's billing 100% or $1,200 for that aspect of the work. Excavation, half of it's complete at this point. So he's billing for half of the $2,000 or $1,000 and so on. And the totals go all the way down to the bottom. And the percentage of completion is shown in the total. We have to fix that, bro. We're not showing the total percent of completion, but the contractor makes a billing for $3,855 on this particular bid. The bottom line is when the next one comes out, he does the same calculation, but deducts the $3,855 from the previous payment and so on and so on and so on, so that you only pay for work that's performed. And you can tell the contractor, hey, you know, this temporary facilities is only 10% complete because we have 7 months and da-da-da-da-da, and neither the contractor can explain it or reduce his percentage of completion. So you have input into this billing if you like.
All right, a little more about payments and completion. Keep in mind that payments may be withheld from the contractor in an amount equal to the work in question due to significantly defective work not remedied or persistent failure by the contractor to carry out the work in accordance with the contract documents. That should be in the contract. That's your right. Final payment shall not be due until the contractor has delivered to the owner a complete release of all liens arising out of the contract, and we'll get into liens a little bit later. If any lien remains unsatisfied after all payments are made, the contractor shall refund to the owner all money the latter may be compelled to pay in discharging such lien, including all costs and reasonable attorney's fees. And finally, the contractor's contingency. By the way, we're doing a project that has a construction loan. The bank is requiring a 10% contingency because they understand construction and they don't want to have to go through the lending process and all of that again. So good contractors will include a contingency in their estimate, not necessarily 10%, ours is 4%, but that's used to offset losses that may occur as a result of bidding variations and price increases experienced during construction. Contractor's contingency is not refundable to the owner and cannot be increased unless additional work is added.
Firm start and finish dates. Boy, this is really important. A good contract always includes firm start and finish dates. The longer the project takes, the greater potential for homeowner fatigue, chaos, and divorce dust. But you need to know up front what the time will be that the project will take. A production schedule. The contractor should provide a rough production schedule in calendar form. There are Gantt charts or bar charts and calendar forms. We do both, but we like to submit a calendar for our production schedule, which outlines planned day-to-day activities. And the schedule is always subject to reasonable adjustment if it doesn't exceed the contract finish date. And most of the time, our schedules end before the contract, the date of contract completion, before the finish date, because we know that there are always adjustments to the schedule. A good contractor will have his superintendent contact each of his customers each and every day to tell them what's going to happen on their project the next day and advise them of when the schedule is being modified. A penalty clause. Look for a contractor who's willing to put his money where his mouth is by agreeing to a financial penalty for every day of work that remains incomplete, for every day that work remains incomplete beyond the finish date. We have a $100 a day penalty in our contract. If we go over schedule, we pay $100 a day. And we haven't done it very often, but we have had to do it when a subcontractor has delayed us. And of course, we get it from the subcontractor when they delay us.
All right, let's talk a little bit about responsibilities. Your responsibilities should be spelled out in a good contract. And owner obligations aren't unusual, but the cost can be quite significant and should be taken into consideration in the overall scheme of things. Some typical owner items include a homeowner's insurance, a land survey if required. That's not often, but it may be required if you're doing an ADU, an appurtenant structure, or adding on. Existing conditions. You want to make sure to make your contractor aware of a septic tank as an example, or sewer laterals or pipes or easements to the extent that you are aware of them. You're going to be responsible for the removal and storage of your personal property. Most contractors don't want to put themselves or your property in harm's way. So if you're doing a kitchen remodel, you clear the cabinets and all of that, and the contractor would then remove the cabinets. A landscape and irrigation repair replacement. Typically, most homeowners really don't want the contractor doing that work. They want to do it themselves or have a landscaper do it. And you can't expect the contractor to be liable for existing code violations that are not apparent when he made his bid and where he hasn't agreed to make those repairs. And for rot and termites, which are only discovered once the project is opened up. Most contractors, once that's discovered, will either give you a time and material That's where time and material is acceptable to the extent that they can make the necessary repairs. In some cases, they can give you a fixed sum. Just depends on the location and extent of the damage.
Owner and contractor responsibilities. So let's talk about the contractor's responsibilities. The contractor shall supervise and direct the work, be solely responsible for all construction means and methods, and for coordinating all portions of the work. Provide and pay for all labor, materials, equipment, tools, construction equipment and machinery, transportation, and other facilities and services necessary. At all times enforce strict discipline and good order among its employees. Secure and pay for building, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical permits, etc. Comply with all laws, ordinance, rules, regulations, and lawful orders of any public authority. Be responsible for the acts and omissions of its employees, subcontractors, and their agents. Match new interior and exterior finishes and construction details as closely as possible to those which exist. If this is in the contract, then you look to this portion of the document to make sure you're getting what you paid for. The contractor is committing to you what he will do, and he needs to follow those rules, and you need to see that he does.
Contractor's insurance. Insurance. Boy, you know, it's not the best investment until you need it. Your contractor shall purchase and maintain general liability insurance and workers' compensation insurance to protect against damage to your property, to protect against personal injury to non-construction individuals, and Helen, making a visit as an example, trips over a 2x4, and to protect workers and subcontractors under the Workers' Compensation Act. Note, be sure to get insurance binders from your contractor's insurance carrier, not the contractor. My brother has an interesting story there. Owner's insurance. The owner shall purchase and maintain liability insurance and property insurance to protect against claims arising from the operation under the contract. As an example, little Johnny's fire truck was in the walkway, and George, the carpenter, was carrying a load of 2x4s and tripped over the fire engine. That is liability on your part. Coverage should insure against the perils of fire and include all risk insurance for physical loss or damage, including theft and vandalism. Once those 2x4s are nailed and put up in place, you own it. So if something happens to the installed product, even though it's complete, it is part of your policy. And keep in mind that you should never let anyone perform major work on your home without this protection. Today, everyone is sue crazy. So no matter how reputable your contractor is, you never know what will happen when someone is seriously injured on your property.
Change orders. Under no circumstances should you pay a penny more than the contract sum without a written change order, which must be approved by both you and your contractor. Like the contract documents, a change order should meticulously detail the modification to the work, the price, and any scheduling change. And some of our change orders have as big a bid as the original bid with some folks. Well, you know, I've decided to do this and I want to do that, and I want to change and I want to do, so it's almost like a contract. When necessary, require revised drawings and specifications to document the change. And by the way, your best defense against change orders and driving up the price is a strong planning offense. In the beginning, plan, and plan some more.
Oh boy, who likes to talk about it in a marriage? You know, you're courting your best girl or guy, and the last thing you want to talk about is about prenuptial. Dispute resolution is not necessarily heading into court, and that provision should be included in a good construction contract because it prevents potential legal action. Construction disputes take place because one party may breach the contract in some manner, and by the way, it's not necessarily the contractor, or a simple miscommunication between parties could arise. Conflict can also occur due to the following reasons: contract delays, failure to enforce the agreement, incomplete or unsubstantiated claims. Now, conflict doesn't always stem from a breach of contract because it could lead to it could lead to contract breaches or one party terminating the agreement. To reduce the likelihood of disputes, each party within a contract should take certain steps to protect themselves before a project starts. So, do that upfront planning that we've talked about before the work begins. Carefully read and understand the contract. If you don't understand it, get an attorney involved. Negotiate clauses that are murky or potentially problematic. Be diligent when it comes to pre-construction work, such as putting together estimates, schedules, contacting subcontractors, making important orders, etc. That's typically something that the contractor will do. And make sure that schedules are realistic and executable, and plan for delays and disruptions. A good contractor will do that. Litigation, as we all know, is almost always a long and costly process. So before heading for the courtroom, consider one of the following alternatives. Negotiation. Attempt to work it out before involving another party. Mediation. A neutral third party helps the parties resolve the dispute, but the parties reserve the right to agree to a settlement. It's not binding. Expert determination is another way to solve the problem. An expert in a given field, construction, roofing, windows, doors, whatever, renders his or her expert decision. The decision, however, is not legally enforceable. Arbitration. A neutral third party considers the facts and renders a decision. However, unlike mediation, the arbitrator's decision is in fact binding.
I'd like to say something about that, James, if you can go back. We found out over the years that 99.9% of disputes arise out of something very simple. A damaged cabinet, who did the damage? A scratched faucet, who scratched the faucet? I'm 73 and James is 61. In 2 months, we go up a year. We've been doing this for 4.5 decades. And we've come to a point in our lives where we look for happiness and joy in our work. And therefore, we find that right or wrong, the customer is always right. Now, there are exceptions, very rare exceptions, but we found that the customer is always right. Going to court, fighting with a customer, ruins your reputation no matter whether you're right or wrong. And there are a lot of contractors like us, who find that disputes just aren't worth fighting. And it's something that you might want to discuss with your contractor before the work begins. You should have this dispute resolution verbiage in your contract. It protects you. You have no idea how much it protects you. But also, having someone who's doing the work who doesn't want to dispute is even more important. Mechanics lien is the most powerful protection the contractor or material supplier has in ensuring that he is paid for services rendered. We've asked you to check out the contractor. We've asked you to check out the work. We've asked you to get details because you need all the protection you can get. A contractor has the mechanics lien as his protection, and it's powerful. Any homeowner in the United States who employs outside labor and material for the improvement or repair of her home is vulnerable to the mechanics lien law. The mechanics lien can be used by any contractor, subcontractor, laborer, supplier, or other persons who help to improve your property, but is not paid for his or her work or supplies. This means that after a court hearing, your property could be sold by a court officer and the proceeds of sale used to satisfy the indebtedness. This can happen even if you've paid your contractor in full, if the subcontractors and laborers or suppliers remain unpaid. So pay the contractor in full, he doesn't pay them, they lien you, you pay twice. To ensure extra protection for yourself and your property, you may wish to take one or more of the following steps. Require your contractor to supply you with payment and performance bond, not a license bond, which provides that the bonding company will either complete the project or pay damages up to the amount of the bond. This payment and performance bond, as well as a copy of the construction contract, should be filed with the county recorder for further protection. The cost of the bond is borne by you, the owner. Require the payments to be made directly to subcontractors and material suppliers through joint control. Sometimes there's a cost for joint control, which you would pay. Issue joint checks for payment made out to both your contractor and subcontractors or material suppliers involved in the project. This will help to assure that all persons' due payments are actually paid. And after making payment on any completed phase of the project and before making any further payments, require your contractor to provide you with notarized, unconditional lien releases for the work performed. A lien release that is not notarized is not a release. Ooh. Lien releases, the law requires anyone who works for a contractor on your property to send you a notice of mechanics lien. They send that notice to you so that you will know they have the right to lien you. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. This warns you that the lumber company wants to be paid and they will get paid from you even if you pay a second time. So you want to be extra specially careful about maybe two-party checks and notarized lien releases.
Well, you've had second thoughts. The adrenaline was pumping. The salesman was fast talking. You were just excited, and reality set in. You decided that, you know what, you don't feel comfortable proceeding. So if you enter into an oral or written contract for certain services for repair, restoration, or improvements to a residence, including home remodeling or home improvement contracts, for work on residential property or certain other service and purchase contracts for other goods at a residence, you have a legal right to get out of those contracts during a short grace period after signing or entering into the contract. Now, those rights apply where the contract is entered into at some location other than the contractor's or seller's regular offices or sales facility, and the consumer possibly may have been pressured into signing the contract. So if this gets signed at your home, if it gets signed at Starbucks, as an example, you can get out of the you can cancel the contract. California, as an example, the civil code requires that at the time of the contract is entered into, the contractor or seller must give the property owner, purchaser, customer written notice of their right to cancel the contract. The property owner must also be given a form for cancellation of the contract, and we're sharing an example of the form that we use. Here's something interesting. The right, especially for our friends in Santa Rosa and Paradise and other parts of the country where natural disasters have happened, the right to cancel lasts for 3 or 7 days from receipt of the written notice of right to cancel, depending upon whether or not the contract is for ordinary remodeling work or for work arising from a publicly declared catastrophe or state of emergency, such as after an earthquake or major fire and the like. So I'm so pleased that the contractors, that the civil code will allow people who are in shock because of a disaster to have a little more time to get out of the contract. And that concludes.
Boy, I hope we didn't go through this too rapidly for you. I hope you got a bunch of good arrows for your hire a contracting quiver or do-it-yourself quiver. We want to thank you from our entire team to you and your household. We hope that you walk away from this presentation a more informed consumer, and that when you discuss your next project with a contractor, you know a little bit more about the risks and the returns. And I guess now, Brother James, shouldn't we answer any questions that may come from our audience?
Yes, so you may use the chat feature, and Lisa is doing that. So feel free to address your questions via the chat. Lisa writes, what can an owner do if there's an item in the contract but it's not being complied with? For example, the start time is much later than what is stated in the contract, or daily end time is much earlier than what is stated in the contract. The contractor is can essentially has the right to begin the workday and end the workday so long as they're within working hours. That is to say that the contractor doesn't have the right to show up at your home at 3 o'clock in the morning. So typically that's between 8 and 5, but if the contractor decides to show at 10 and be done by 3, and that the work is acceptable and that the schedule is on track and that the contractor can finish the work in accordance with the start and finish date, then you have to take a deep breath and just allow the contractor to do his or her thing. Personally, I like harmony and decorum. I think if you have a work day, you ought to stick by it. But essentially, all else being equal, the contractor can come and go as he or she pleases.
I think it's important to note that if a person is leaving the job early, you ought to contact the contractor and ask why. In some instances, the workman is scheduled for your job, another one on the same day. Actually, you should know that from the contractor's superintendent or from the contractor himself. You should be kept apprised of short days. We have electronic payroll, and we know where every man is at every moment. But with remodeling, many times during the day, the workman must leave the project to get materials. That is a quirk of remodeling that we haven't figured out how to solve. The thing about starting late, if a contractor isn't going to start if the contractor agrees to start the job at a certain time and nothing's changed since the contract, and he isn't beginning you on time, it's not going to get better. You have a right to cancel the contract because he is in breach for not meeting his obligation to you. So when the contractor has a written start and finish date in the contract and he won't start it on time, then you have a reason to call for a breach. We have a policy in our company where we have a start date, which is the date for ordering. Then we have a beginning at the job site date. We never used to have that. We'd have a start date and then we'd do all the buying and get the job ready to go because we didn't want to go into the kitchen unless we had the cabinets ready. Tear the kitchen out, rebuild the plumbing, heating, and electrical, insulate and sheetrock, paint it, and put the cabinets in. If the cabinets aren't there, the job's delayed.
Right.
So we found that we were irritating clients because we used start date as a preparation date. Now we've learned that consumers don't understand that. So we have two start dates, the start date where we buy and the start date where we come onto the site. And you might ask your contractor about that when you're doing your setup.
And Sherry has raised her hand, and so she's going to ask her question. Sherry, thanks for being with us today. You can go ahead and ask your question. You are muted, so you need to unmute.
Little microphone in the lower left-hand corner of your screen has a cross over it. Click it, the cross goes away, and your mic fires up.
All right, while we're waiting for Sherry, we all know that we're learning these virtual models, and boy, hasn't life changed, which addresses Walt's question. And Walt, thank you for your email. Walt says, what is the average time frame to remodel 2 bathrooms? Typically, they're done in tandem rather than side by side, unless you have a 3rd bathroom. But I would say anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks would be average per bathroom. So we happen to be doing 2 bathrooms at the same time at the moment. And it's about 8 weeks total for both bathrooms because they're pretty complex. The amount of time has everything to do with the finishes that are being selected. If you're doing a quartz or granite countertop and you're doing tile floors and you're doing another sheet good for the shower walls, if you're making an accessible space and reframing the floor for wheelchair access, that can extend the time. If, on the other hand, you're doing a one-piece fiberglass or acrylic unit and vinyl flooring and there are no significant framing changes, that job will go much faster. So It will depend. Where do you look to find reputable and honest contractors? I think we've addressed that in our presentation, and this will be available for you to go back and watch when it's posted. Walt also asks, during this COVID era, how do you do estimates? Interesting, we've evolved. Necessity is the mother of invention. We introduced virtual design consultations, and it's wonderful. We talk through hopes and dreams and fears and budget. If we feel it's a match, then we will visit your home, mask up, social distance, measure, enter into a design and project planning agreement, and then create the design. We'll do virtual design review, so you never have to leave the comfort of your home. And then we will do virtual estimate presentation and even execute contract documents virtually. So we are finding that many people that do what we do are utilizing this across the country. And we find that our clients are warming up to it quite nicely. Kenneth asks, what is the average building cost for a home in the San Francisco Bay Area, specifically Palo Alto? We have a cost versus value report that we will share with you. We'll include that in our offerings on our web link, which will be posted after this. Cost versus value discusses building costs. They're very expensive, though. It's difficult to offer a square footage price because that has everything to do with the size of the project, whether it's a new single family or an addition, where the addition is located, what the existing structural details are, and so on. But you can find that it's $300 to $1,000 per square foot.
I used to build homes for $37 a square foot, complete. That's going on to a lot full of weeds and finishing up with a garden and driveway and everything complete and ready to be furnished. $37 a square foot. And I'd build those houses in 6 weeks. Now, $500 a square foot is just a medium price for a custom home. And $1,000 is not the top end, but you're not going to build for anything under $500. There's no such thing as a $100 a square foot house anymore. They're gone. Even in the neighborhoods where housing sells for $200,000 now, that it's ridiculous. Prices are ridiculous in California.
Particularly in the Bay Area.
Particularly here where we live. Ridiculous.
Lisa says, what if you sign a contract, then the homeowner is unable to make contact with the contractor, doesn't answer phone, doesn't return voicemail messages or emails. The owner wants to proceed with the contract with that contractor, but may not be able to. First of all, the owner should not want to proceed with the contract with that contractor. You may as well, you may as well, jump off a cliff. That is a total red flag. Consider yourself lucky that you have not proceeded with the contract. Advise the contractor, first of all, follow your contract. The reason you want to follow your contract is because if you should digress in some way or deviate in some way, shape, or form, you shoot yourself in the foot. Follow the contract, give the required notice, send the email, send the letter, regular mail, send it certified, and say, you are in breach of contract. You will not respond to my calls. And I don't care whether this contractor is the A1 contractor, 5 stars, most wonderful thing on the face of the earth. This contractor has disrespected you, and there is absolutely no excuse for that treatment. The fact that you are not being attended to, and that the contractor doesn't answer the phone, doesn't return voicemail messages or emails, is a complete disregard for you and your business relationship. Consider yourself lucky, give the contractor notice, and find a contractor who will be responsive.
There are plenty of fish in the sea.
Yeah. Yeah, so the response is, yeah, I know, but I've used that contractor before and the contractor did great work. I have 2 words for you, Lisa. Move on.
Yeah.
Period.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
Okay,
Move on.
let's see if Sherry, we'll wrap things up. Let's see if Sherry, I've asked to unmute without success. I'm sorry, I wish Sherry would state her question, but.
Sherry, email us at info@onthehouse.com or info@carrybrothers.com, and we'll take care of you.
So this is one of our clients, and I took this picture. A really great gentleman who is suffering from Parkinson's and needed some things done to his home that made life around his house joyful. And there's something, listen, we are entitled to earn a profit. We want to make 10% before taxes. And I can assure you that is a real undertaking. So for our risk, we want a reasonable return just like anybody else. But I'm going to tell you that pales profit and money as a medium of exchange pales by comparison to the joy that we experience in bringing others pleasure, comfort, value, happiness, and joy. And we've had the opportunity to do that together for now 40 years. So
and there are lots of contractors like us, and all you just have to do is look. We enjoy what we do, and we enjoy the friendships that we make as we do our work. And there are many people in our industry who are like that. And we know that there are less than reputable contractors as well. And we're trying to steer you away, wherever you are in the country, from those less than reputable contractors who don't consider you first.
have we made our mistakes? Absolutely. Do we continue to make mistakes? You bet. We try not to make the same mistake twice. We try and learn from our mistakes, and we share them. The difference is that we're in a position to correct our mistakes, and the guy that's the low bid is not in a position to correct his mistakes. He's too tight, and if something goes haywire, then an argument arises. Listen, we want to invite you to take advantage of this presentation. You will receive an email that advises you when the presentation is posted so that you can draw upon the video. We will also add a link to our website posted on YouTube. And we want you to know that we're always available to you through our radio program. And as Brother Morris indicated, through info@carrybros, CAREYBROS.com, or info@onthehouse.com. Thank you so much for making time for us today. We hope that you found the information valuable, and we wish you much success with whatever your project may be. Thank you.
Thank you.